The Indiana Pacers preseason home opener. Pacers 13-point comeback spearheaded by Bennedict Mathurin, who was awesome. 27 points for the rookie. Andrew Nimbard, equally awesome with 15 points, clutch shots, 9 assists. Lots to talk to you about that game. Lots of contract stuff happened for the Pacers today. We'll get to it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the West Side Community News. And today, holy smokes, what just happened in Gainbridge Fieldhouse? Pacers home preseason opener. Pacers down 13 in the second quarter. Things are looking dire. Tyrese Haliburton's hurt. Rookies to the rescue. Huge game from Bennedict Mathurin. Huge game from Andrew Nimbard. We'll break that down, talk about the game as a whole, and then big day on the contract side. This would have been the leading story if the Pacers had lost. Rookie skill options picked up for Tyrese Haliburton, Aaron Nesmith, Chris Duarte, Isaiah Jackson. We'll break that all down to close out the show today. But the leading story, I want to talk about the game, but we got to go in backwards order. Sidebar is first today. Bennedict Mathurin and Andrew Nimbard, the top two picks for the Pacers in this most recent draft, absolutely lit it up in their first official NBA game, not a regular season game, but first official game in the NBA in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. What a debut for both of these guys. Bennedict Mathurin, 29 minutes, almost 30 minutes. Most he's played in the preseason by far. 8 for 13 from the field, 11 of 12 from the free throw line, 27 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal. Absolutely electric. Had no trouble getting to the rim, finishing through contact. We'll break down his game. And then Andrew Nimbard, the 31st overall pick, gets expanded opportunity because Tyrese Haliburton does not play in this game, so he's playing behind TJ McConnell. He was in the rotation the first half, and then in the closing group that made a huge comeback in this game. 6 for 12 from the field, 2 for 4 from deep. He finishes with 15 points, 4 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. Ridiculous game from both of these rookies. We'll start with Mathurin, who's going to be the story of a lot of Pacers games this season. It would appear from something like this. And really, to me, this is all about his drives, his ability to get all the way to the rim. Bennedict Mathurin went 8 for 13 in this game. And I would wager, I can't remember all of them, but I would wager all 8 of his makes were from within 5 feet of the rim, maybe one a little farther. I'll try to pull up his shot chart from the game because he was just completely ridiculous. And the Knicks could not keep him out of the paint. I will try to pull up his shot attempts that were made, but he just bullied by people. He said that, I asked him after the game, what kind of changed for you that allowed you to do this? He said he saw something on the film that he didn't take advantage of in the first game that he wanted to this time. So I said, what was it? Well, it was something about the way that the Knicks were defending him off of screens. Okay, his farthest distance of a made shot in this game was 10 feet. He had a 7-footer, all the rest inside 5 feet, right? So he was driving all the way to the rim, and he said something about the way the Knicks were sagging back a little. When he would come around screens, he could just hesitate for a little bit, draw him up, and boom, blow past him. What an impressive performance. He was getting by no matter who was guarding him. He could get by them enough or get a half step enough to get an open look at the rim. He did well on the offensive glass to get a few of those buckets right around the basket. And he was finishing them as well. 8 for 13, 8 for 11 on 2-pointers specifically. And the big one is the drawing of the fouls, right? 12 free throw attempts. He was getting by people to the extent that Knicks had to rotate over and cut him off, and they had to foul him all the time. 1 free throw away from a perfect game from the line. I mean, it was just, he looked unstoppable at times in this game, playing against a big boy NBA defense. His drives are already looking like a high level thing for him. We'll see in the regular season. Caveats abound for all this. It's preseason, but it was very impressive to see. And Carlisle after the game said something to the effect of, some guys have skills that just translate better to NBA basketball than NCAA basketball. And perhaps Mathurin could be someone who fits in that camp, that his game, his aggression, his fearlessness for fighting through contact is just an NBA skill more so than it was a college skill. It certainly looks that way so far. He was absolutely ridiculous driving to the basket. Gets in really deep on all these drives. He finds all these crevices, and he just goes right through guys, right? A lot of rookies shy away from the contact or try to shoot over guys. He just keeps going on his path, keeps going up in the way he wants, and that lets him, of course, finish better because he's finishing on his own terms instead of the defender's terms, but also lets him get up 12 free throws. Half of the Pacers' free throw attempts were from Bennedict Mathurin in this game. And if you have 27 points on 13 shots in any game at any experience level, rookie, 10-year vet, whatever, that's a dang good game. Bennedict Mathurin did it. Of course, it's a preseason game, but did it as a rookie. Super impressive. So, one, obviously impressive that he had a great game. That's, of course, encouraging if you're the Pacers, who are betting this guy will be very good after picking him 6th overall. But to me, another takeaway I have from this, after speaking with him in the media session post game as well, is like he identified something on the film that he thought, oh, I could do better if I changed this approach a little bit. And regardless of how general or specific he was being in explaining it to me, he made an adjustment to the way he was playing, and he just destroyed the other team using that. That is very encouraging to me if you're the Pacers to think and say, oh wow, this guy can already see the tape of his own performances and realize what he needs to do better or realize what he did wrong and how he can approach it differently to be a better player. That is a skill that even as his own skill set evolves, he can still use that drawing from film ability to his advantage at all times. The fact that he's already able to do that, and an advantage the Pacers have in scheduling the same team in consecutive preseason games, is something that he can hang his hat on. He'll always be able to adjust and still be a high level player so long as he can figure out how to get by guys. And defenses will adjust to him, right? That always is a thing. That happened with Duarte last year. He started off awesome. Defenses started to go, oh, wow, this guy's a threat, and put more pressure on him. That'll happen to Mathurin this year as well, right? It's all going to be roses at first, but eventually he will hit tougher assignments and tougher challenges. But if he can see on the film how to get around it, that's encouraging. And he's not the only rookie that stole the show in this game. Of course, 27 points on 13 shots merits a ton of discussion. How about Andrew Nimbard, who I feel good about being relatively high on him for a lot of preseason and summer league? 15-9, 4 rebounds, tons of clutch shots. Buried a huge mid-ranger, hit the three that I think gave them the lead, hit another three that cut the lead from 6-3 or something like that. Huge part of the comeback. He looked phenomenal. He was just kind of skating around, and I've always been impressed because of the passing. At his height, he can get into traffic and still see the passes that are available to him. But of course, he reads the game well enough that in pick and roll situations, even against the Knicks in New York, he was finding shooters in the corner or finding the roll man and helping Goga play well. But in this game, it was a little more spread out and did a good job in the pick and roll game again. Like it's just really impressive, and something that is extra impressive to me in this game specifically. He was the backup point guard, right? So he played with the second unit with Isaiah Jackson as the big and a little bit of minutes with Miles. He's got chemistry with every big to an extent, and that is not necessarily like he's already got some sixth sense with them that no other point guard has. It's just that the way he plays, the feel he has for those sort of situations, he already can kind of hit them with on time passes. Him and Goga had a really good 2-man game going in the fourth quarter. I was really surprised to see Goga Batadze and Andrew Nembhard 2-man game be tearing it up. And yeah, it's against the Knicks third stringers in the preseason, but I mean, that's impressive for both of those guys who really needed a moment like that. And Andrew Nimbard was a big part of that, manipulating the defense, finding the right passes. He's just so smooth and collected. And in this game, what took it to another level, I would expect a guy who could easily get 3-4 assists in the 9 minutes he's playing, in the other preseason games to get up to 9 with 25 minutes. Sure. I mean, that's still impressive, but a little different level. The 15 points is the standout part here. The fact that he put the ball in the basket himself, hit half his threes, got to the rim, 6 made shots in total. Just a really complete game for him. 5 turnovers, something he'll have to clean up for sure. But I was just really impressed with the way he played in the scoring department to put it all together. And like Mathurin, a lot of the reason he's able to be so successful, he's just not afraid of traffic, right? He'll get into the defense and find the passes once they're bending or once he's around the tall trees and he's big enough to make those plays. So I was really impressed with the way he played and the poise he showed. And Wilson Moore, Indy Stars, current Pacers guy. He's an intern, but he's currently the fill-in beat writer. Was asking, I think, another important part of this story in his questioning after the game. It's like, this was their first close game for a lot of these rookies at the NBA level. So they got experience of what a close game is like at the NBA level, how to buckle down, and they made a nice comeback. And that's obviously not going to be the expectation, but for a team that was terrible in these instances last year, to have them get that experience and take advantage of it was, of course, something encouraging that the Pacers will hang their hat on going forward. So huge game from those two rookies. And for a Pacers team heading into a rebuild, whatever you want to call it, having a big game from two rookies in their home debuts, even in the preseason, super encouraging, something the team will, of course, be happy with and hope will carry into the regular season. Hey, there was a whole game outside of the performance of those two guys. Got to talk about everybody else. Tyrese Haliburton not playing. What's up with that? Lots to get to still as we break down Pacers Knicks here before we dive into the rest of the game. Though I want to talk to you guys about betonline.net, your number one source for football betting info this season. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, in-depth articles, and analysis on every game you can find over at BetOnline. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information, live betting, up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there, and more. They've got lines up for football this week. Bears and Commanders tonight for Thursday night. No spread, even game there. Colts this weekend hosting the Jags. They're kryptonite. Colts favored by 2, which is, I guess, surprising. I don't really know what to make of either of those teams. You can see all those lines over at betonline.net and plenty more. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head over to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, go listen to Locked On Knicks, hear what they had to say about this game and how the Knicks could not hold on to their lead, but still got good performances from a lot of their key guys, and we're at one point up 13 in the competitive portion of the game. There was a lot of game that happened outside of the studly play from two Pacer rookies who really stood out in this game. And of course, if you listen to yesterday's show previewing this game in the third segment, to me, one of the big things I would be watching in this game was the Pacers defense. They gave up 131 to this Knicks team a couple nights ago. The Knicks now have more guys available, right? Evan Fournier is playing. Daquan Jeffries is available. They played fewer guys. They actually played their rotation pretty seriously, almost 30 minutes for Brunson, 26 and a half minutes for Barrett. But could the Pacers defense ratchet it up, right? Could they force more turnovers? Could they be more disruptive? Could they make life harder? At first, the answer was looking like a huge no, a big no. 33 first quarter points for the Knicks. They did it really easily. And a lot of my notes in that quarter were, Brunson still getting to the rim easily, right? He took 14 shots in this game, and RJ Barrett was killing him. So was Julius Randle. And then something clicked. Boom. The Pacers sort of just figured it out in the second quarter. It wasn't right at the beginning of the second quarter, right? They were down still double digits early in that frame, but the starters came back in full hockey subs about halfway through the second quarter, and the defense just started to click for the Pacers. And a lot of it was, to me, Isaiah Jackson and Miles Turner doing a better job defending the paint when guards got beat. I still think guards were getting beat quite a bit, but those two did a little bit better in a way that deterred attackers and forced the Knicks into a different shot selection. Really impressed with both Miles Turner and Isaiah Jackson on the defensive end in this game. I think they were a big part of turning this game around on its head. And Isaiah Jackson just continues to be such an impressive defender for his experience level. So their defense really stepped up after that terrible first quarter where, again, 33 points. Looks like they're going to give up 130 again. They end up only giving up 100, right? They only give up 67 points over the final 3 quarters. And, Carlisle said there was some more force and spirit and, some of his favorite words to talk about defense. But I think that I'm speaking for him a little here, but to me, that stands for more disruption, and they're just quicker to their closeouts and quicker to their assignments and more in the passing lanes. And they just looks like there's more Pacer on the floor than 5 guys. They're just more around the ball and threatening in a way that they aren't and weren't in the first quarter of this game. And that sort of carried into the second half, right? It looked like for a little bit in the third quarter, the Knicks were going to get it going, but they didn't. And the Pacers defense really did improve, not only from last Friday when they played the same team, but over the course of the game, which I think is something they'll be happy about as they've been working on defense so much. So at first, my notes of this game were about to say, this is about to be a very similar podcast to last Monday's, talking about Pacers Knicks, but instead they really turned it around. And I think that's a very impressive thing for a team that needs to grow on that end of the floor. And One of the stats I talked about watching was the turnovers. They forced the Knicks into 15 this time. They keep the Knicks off the line, 5 fewer free throws, and some of it's just the Knicks shot worse from deep. But the Pacers defense was much better. I think that's a big takeaway from this game as the Pacers grew, and they made a big comeback, right? They were down 13 in the second quarter and slowly chipped at it until they finally found a way to get that lead in the fourth quarter, right? They were down double digits at times in the third. Even in the fourth, the Knicks were up 10 about halfway through it. But the Pacers' second unit came in, really their reserves, and had a very, very dominant ending. Their offense was really clicking for the last 6 minutes of this game. And it wasn't a group you'd expect to do really well. Like I said, Goga Bitadze and Andrew Nimbard were sort of the drivers of this group. But the Knicks were up big, with not much time left in this game, 94-84 with 6 minutes and 10 seconds to go, and the Pacers get it done. Mathurin was in there, Bitadze was in there, Nembhard was in there, Terry Taylor was in there, and O'Shea Brissett. That was the closing group that led the spirited Pacer comeback. They gave up 6 points in the final 6 minutes, more evidence of their good defense, but also scored 20-something points in that same stretch. So great work from that group. And I talked about Andrew Nembhard at the beginning. This was definitely Goga's best game of the preseason. He had a good defensive game in New York last Friday, but the offense was there for him today. Drilled both of his threes, hit all of his shots, finished with 8 points, 2 blocks and a rebound and an assist. Did a really nice job with the screening, being around the ball, and being a threat in this game. That's the kind of stuff he's got to carry. He's got to be able to be more effective around the ball on offense. Because again, I've been higher on his defense than basically everybody for his whole career, but he put it together on the offensive end. In this one, it was definitely his best game of the preseason. Of course, Mathurin in that group was awesome along with Nimbard. So somehow I've made it this far and haven't even talked about it. Tyrese Haliburton did not play. that would have been another headliner had the game not gone the way it did. Tyrese Haliburton did not play. Rick Carlisle, that's the first thing he says in his pregame media session. No Tyrese in this game. Lower back soreness day to day. Doesn't sound like something that, will keep him out into the season or for a while. It's just popping up before the game. So I doubt it's a long-term lingering thing. There's no real point to play him on Friday if it's even bothering him at all. That would give him over a week of recovery time between games to be prepared for the regular season opener. So we'll see what his status is, or maybe he just barely plays on Friday. But that's why he did not play. TJ McConnell started in his stead, and McConnell, with the way he plays, the way he just gets into the paint for passing, can kind of fit with any group. 6 assists. He really struggled shooting the ball. He went 1 for 7 on his 2-pointers, which is concerning for him. Since that's where he normally can score from. But he had a 3, and he actually shot faked Jalen Brunson into fouling him behind the 3-point arc. I thought that was pretty interesting wrinkle for him. So he did fine in the starting role. Nimbard really was the guy who took advantage of the increased minutes. But I don't expect Haliburton to be out much longer. But he did not play. 2 other notes, actually a couple more notes from this game. One, the first sub in this game, first guy off the bench, O'Shea Brissett. That one really caught me by surprise after Rick Carlisle was talking about how they were going to adjust with Aaron Nesmith out. They just stuck O'Shea in over Terry Taylor completely. Terry Taylor played some 3 in this game. Jalen Smith, we'll talk about him in a second for this too, got hurt mid-game, which sort of tweaked things. But O'Shea Brissett, first guy off the bench, and had the highest plus minus at plus 16 for the Pacers. 8 boards, 1 assist for Brissett in this game. Only 2 points, missed all 3 of his shot attempts, but really showed his impact on defense and was in the game late for that big comeback down the stretch. So he does his thing. He fits in. He finds a way to have an impact even when his shot necessarily isn't a part of it. So I thought that was noteworthy. We'll see how the rotation develops. Like I just said, Terry Taylor played the 3, played well in that spot. Just sort of a tweak for the Pacers with Nesmith out, and an injury to Jalen Smith. So Jalen Smith, second quarter, first of all, attacks a closeout. He gets run off the 3-point line, puts it on the floor, takes it all the way to the rim, goes up for the layup, and I think it was Evan Fournier. This was a really unfortunate play. Evan Fournier looked like he was trying to get out of the way and not undercut him, but the way he kind of stuck his arm in the air ended up catching on Jalen Smith, so he just flipped over a player and landed on his hand weird, stayed in the game. It looked like a wrist or hand injury. He didn't play in the second half, but Rick Carlisle said it's a pinky injury, and he was trying to come back in, but Rick didn't want him to come back in. What's the point? It's preseason. So that is the Jalen Smith story. But he did much. Rick Carlisle gave him credit. He did better defending Julius Randle. 9 points, 4 rebounds for Jalen Smith in this game. Kendall Brown was the Nesmith replacement in the rotation. He played a lot of first half minutes, ended up playing 13 minutes in this game. Would have probably played more, but dealt with some foul issues. I believe he had 3 pretty quick ones in this game that kept him from playing a little bit more. And the last note for me, since I've talked about basically every player, Chris Duarte, another really impressive game as he continues to be this nice connecting piece outside of the 2 rookies who had wonderful games and played the most minutes of anybody. Duarte leads the team in shots with 11 with Haliburton out, 5 rebounds, 13 points, 2 assists for Duarte, who had some nice drives to the basket in this game, which I thought was noteworthy for him, since I've kind of pegged him as mostly 3-and-D. To see him be more of a secondary attacker has been impressive. And again, 13-and-5, a solid game for him, right? That's kind of what his stat line looks like it's going to be a lot this season. So all in all, have I even said the score? Pacers won 109-100, beat the Knicks. They're 2-1 in the preseason now. Rockets on Friday to close it out, but a lot of impressive performances in this game. A lot of guys doing their job. And I think that is, I still think this team's not going to be very good and they're going to be pretty inconsistent. But in this game, they were doing their job and they got good performances from guys that really matter for this team's future long term. Speaking of this team's future long term, Pacers made some contract moves on Wednesday. Rookie scale options picked up for 4 guys. I was going to use a segment today to talk about them doing this at some point in October, but they did it today. So how convenient. I actually get to talk about the result and not the process, but I'll do both. Why did they do it? What does it mean for the team's cap situation next year? Who are the guys they picked up options for? Let's break it all down to close out the show. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. Not a lot of big news in the NBA today. So, hey, hop on over to Locked On Heat. They signed a guy to a 2-way contract. They played all their starters together for the first time in a preseason game. David Ramil and Wes Goldberg do a great job covering that Miami Heat team. Yeah, Pacers make a lot of contract moves after signing Trevelyan Queen yesterday. If you want to hear more about that, go back 1 podcast. 4 air quotes on 4. It's really 1 move that they made for 4 different players, but 4 moves made today by the Pacers, picking up rookie scale team options for Tyrese Haliburton, Chris Duarte, Isaiah Jackson, and Aaron Nesmith. That's all 4 guys who have rookie scale team options available. Goga already in year 4, so he has no options left. Jalen Smith, obviously, not in a position to have rookie skill options anymore after the Suns famously declined his, and no one else on the Pacers is on a rookie scale deal who's young. O'Shea Brissett's just on a standard minimum deal. Andrew Nimbard's on a standard contract. Harry Taylor's on a standard contract. So that was it. It was those 4 guys who had to have decisions on their contract made by October 31st. So how these rookie scale deals work, it's kind of confusing to explain, but rookie scale deals aren't like other contracts. Instead, it's a 4-year contract when you get drafted in the first round, but only the first 2 years are guaranteed. And then the 3rd and 4th year are team options, but they're decided a full season in advance. So teams can't just end up cutting rookies. It's basically a safety net for rookies to get a little more time to develop. It's very rare that Jalen Smith situations happen and 3rd-year options get declined, right? That's why these options are a year early. So even terrible players who get picked in the first round get at least 3 years of time to develop. But anyway, they're done a full year in advance. So Chris Duarte is about to enter his 2nd season, but his 3rd-year team option had to be decided on by October 31st. Tyrese Haliburton about to enter his 3rd season. It was his 4th-year option. Same with Nesmith. It was his 4th-year option. And Isaiah Jackson, drafted in the same class as Duarte, was his 3rd-year option. I got a source or 2 to confirm the Isaiah Jackson one earlier today when the news of the other guys came in. But they did it all at once in one announcement. So all done today. All of those guys had their options picked up. So Chris Duarte and Isaiah Jackson had their 3rd-year options picked up. And Aaron Nesmith and Tyrese Haliburton had their 4th-year options picked up, meaning all of them now under contract officially through 2023-24. In Duarte and Jackson's case, they have another team option that next October is the deadline for that, for 2024-25 on their rookie scale deals. And then after 2023-24, Tyrese Haliburton and Aaron Nesmith would enter restricted free agency should they not sign an extension next summer. That was a lot of babbling words, but the crux of the situation is, the thesis is, those guys are now under contract for the next 2 years. That's as simple as it is. And it doesn't even really sound like news. It's all pretty procedural, right? There's no way, even if Tyrese Haliburton breaks both of his legs tomorrow, they would have picked up the options, right? Same with Duarte, same with Jackson. Now, Nesmith sort of surprised me. This one's interesting. So the Pacers are in a unique situation where, well, I guess it's not that unique. But anyway, they have a ton of cap space next summer. So, there's no real downside to picking up these guys' options because it's not like picking up a tiny team option on Aaron Nesmith's deal is the difference between them having the cap space to do something amazing and not. And they can still easily dump all these guys to clear space if they need to. So these really were all obvious moves. But, with Nesmith, he was the only one that hadn't shown so much in his career already that it just felt like a no-brainer. Like Haliburton, Duarte, and Jackson were like, duh. Nesmith, I thought maybe they would consider thinking about that one, but he had an awesome first preseason game, and they have very little opportunity cost of picking up the option. So no point in not. It clearly looks like he's going to be a guy who fits, and if he's in the rotation all season, even if he doesn't stick in that spot or doesn't end up popping majorly this year, okay, well, you have a deep reserve bench piece who's cheap and young as in an X lottery pick, and maybe you can include him in a trade. So in the end, it ended up being no-brainers for all of them. I think Nesmith's first preseason game was a nice confidence builder that made this a little easier. So because Nesmith became an easy decision, they like him and he had a nice first preseason game, this was basically a procedural move. This was going to happen anyway at some point. I was joking with Scott McNeilis, who I talked to about all this cap stuff, right? It's a pretty funny thing because the deadline is October 31st. You don't have to do it till then, but there's no reason to wait, but there's also no reason to do it early. If you're going to pick up the option, even if the guy gets dramatically injured, there's no reason to wait, but there's no reason to do it on a specific day. So we were joking that it's basically like kids arguing, why do it now? Well, why wait? Well, there's no good answer. So the Pacers just did it now. There's no reason not to do it now. There would have been no reason not to do it on any specific day, but they just did it. So all those guys now locked up next season for specific contract numbers. Aaron Nesmith in 2023-24, $5.6 million. Isaiah Jackson in that same season, a little over $2 million. Just a complete steal. $2.5 million, excuse me. He'll be at $2.69 million. Tyrese Haliburton will be at $5.8 million, and Chris Duarte will be at $4.1 million. All just complete steals. That's the nature of rookie scale deals. But when you hit the draft picks with Duarte and Jackson and you make good trades to get guys who fit in your team, like with Nesmith and Haliburton, it just works out that way that you get guys on cheapo deals. Now, eventually they'll become more expensive, but for now, this was nice and easy. So the Pacers still project to have a ton of cap space next summer. Like I said, I don't think this will be anything that, gets in the way of them making a move, or else, again, they wouldn't have done it. They planned these things out for years and years and years, but it's done now. The Pacers have officially picked up those options. That was the last thing on my off-season contracts to-do list. They had the Goga extension, which I talked about on Monday, or at least the decision to make that extension by next Monday. Super that happens. The other thing was the rookie option deadline for those 4 players, which is done. The Pacers off-season moves are all, except for finalizing their roster, completely done. The only decisions left for the Pacers to make is who's their last roster spot, if they even use it, right? James Johnson, Langston Galloway, Davy Das Servitas, someone else in the league, right? Trevelyan Queen got cut. They scoop him up on a 2-way. Maybe that happens somewhere else where another player that they're into gets cut, and they cut all 3 of those guys I just said and sign them instead. So that is the only remaining thing. Well, the Goga extension deadline is Monday. That is not going to happen. But that's the only thing left for the Pacers, finalizing that roster. They've got till Monday to do it. So maybe we'll start seeing some of those moves earlier than that. If they want to get someone in to play in their preseason game Friday, it would have to happen tomorrow. But if not, I think we'll start seeing those moves after their final preseason game. We'll talk about that tomorrow. That'll be one of my segments, is the roster battle for the last roster spot. What makes the most sense? What have we learned about these guys? Does anyone stand out above the rest? And yeah, we'll go from there. So tomorrow, of course, talking Rockets, Pacers. What unique challenges do the Rockets present that will help the Pacers in preseason play? And we'll talk, of course, about those roster battles. Last chance to maybe talk about some of those guys in their Pacers tenure next Monday. Talk about what happened in the Rockets game, who they cut, all sorts of good stuff as the roster gets finalized for the season. And then it's regular season mode, what we learned in the preseason, and then season preview mode. I've got some guests lined up. Should be super awesome and fun. Thank you guys a ton for listening to the show. Hope you enjoyed the Bennedict, Mathurin, and Andrew Nimbard home performances. They both played very well. I was excited to talk about them on this show. You can follow me on Twitter at TEastNBA and this podcast at Locked On Pacers. We're bringing you the latest and greatest news about the Indiana Pacers every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Everybody have a great rest of your day. We'll see you tomorrow.